Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, my fellow chefs. We are making something so delicious today. I wonder if you know that May is National Salsa Month. And I know that we've made salsa together before, so this recipe is a little bit different. This recipe is called Texas Caviar, but it's not really caviar. And do you know what caviar is? Caviar is quite delicious, but I don't know how often you might have eaten it because it's quite expensive. Caviar are fish eggs. They really are tastier than they sound, but a little bit cost prohibitive to be able to eat it all the time. Average caviar costs anywhere from $65 to $150 for 1 ounce. So, we are making something that has that in the name, but is not really caviar. It's just kind of fancy salsa. Texas fancy, y'all. So here's what you're going to need to get started for your Texas caviar. You are going to need 1 can of black beans, 1 can of black-eyed peas, which are not actually peas, they are beans. Sometimes called a cow pea or a cow bean, and they originate from Africa, so you will see them in a lot of Pan-African dishes. We also are going to be using 2 cups of corn. You can use fresh or frozen. Fresh, of course, is always great if you can get it, but cutting it off the cob sometimes is a little bit tricky. I just use frozen, and one of the steam-in bags from Publix is exactly 2 cups of corn. We also are going to be using 4 tablespoons of olive oil, a little bit of kosher salt and some black pepper, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. There's no wine in it though. You are also going to be using 5 cloves of minced garlic, and the equation on that, 1 tablespoon, I'm sorry, that's too much, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic equals 1 clove. But if you use a little bit extra, I'm sure nobody but the vampires will mind, right? You are also going to be using some fresh cilantro, red onion, green onion or scallions, a red pepper, a green pepper, a jalapeno, and the juice from 1 lime. So in addition to our ingredients, of course you will need your cutting boards, a good chopping knife, a bowl, and something to mix it with. So while you gather up all your ingredients, I'm going to start the magic of chopping these vegetables, and I'll show you some handy dandy tricks to make it easier for you. See you momentarily. One of our ingredients that we are using today are scallions, aka green onions. So we're going to use 3 of those. One thing you want to keep in mind is always trim off your ends and rinse it very well. All of your fresh vegetables and produce that you bring home from the grocery store always need to be rinsed off. Some produce that is organic, of course, will have less pesticides and things on it to help it grow and keep it from getting eaten by all of the critters that you might find outside. But even organic vegetables, you definitely want to rinse them off because you don't know what they were right next to in a box or a crate as they came on their way to the grocery store. So that is always your first step in using any fresh vegetables. So our green onions, we are going to slice these rather thin. And the thing with green onions is the closer you get to this white end of the onion, the more intense the onion flavor is going to be. So like I said, we're just going to do 3. And whenever you are using your chopping knife, you want to kind of grip it like this and then hold it like that. And of course you want to keep your fingertips out of the way on the other end, but you do want to use kind of just your knuckles like this to hold whatever you're chopping in place. So we are going to just very, very thinly chop up these green onions. And like I said, the closer you get down to this white end, the more intense the flavor is going to be. So it depends on how much you really, really love onions. If you love that flavor, and I definitely do, I like to use the entire onion, but maybe you don't. But here's another really neat trick. If you save the white ends and you put them in a container of water and put them outside, you can grow your own green onions. Isn't that amazing? I think it's a wonderful life hack. So I'm gonna work on getting the rest of these veggies chopped up for you, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, y'all, I am gonna show you how to process these bell peppers that we are using. We want them diced, which means they will be in little cubes. And my favorite chef, Anne Burrell, has a saying that goes, slices, sticks, dices. So no matter what you are chopping up, whether it's produce or bread, maybe cheese, I do love cheese, you can use this method and it will make very perfectly sized cubes and everything will be very even. And that's one of the things that you always want to make sure of when you're dicing, especially veg, and particularly if you're going to be cooking it, you want it to be all the same size. It looks prettier and it cooks more evenly. Our green peppers, I chopped off both ends, so we have a flat surface on either side. So we have our slices, and I cut out all the insides and threw all that away. We don't need any of that. And then I cut it into sticks, and then from there, dices. And we are back. So we are going to work with this jalapeno. And yes, they can be very spicy. So what I've done is I've just cut off either end. And what I'm going to do from this point, now that I have this flat base that I can sit it on, I am going to, actually, we'll just cut it right down the middle, make it a little bit easier to work with even yet. So we're just going to cut it in half lengthwise. And then we're going to take a spoon and we are going to scrape all of the insides out, because that is actually where all the spice comes from. It comes from the seeds and all the bits that are on the inside of the pepper. Now it's still going to be a little bit spicy, but we're gonna take most of the kick out of that. Unless, of course, you and your family really do love spicy things, then you could leave some of the seeds in. But the seeds are filled with capsaicin, which is what makes it so spicy. Another thing that you want to definitely keep in mind when you're working with jalapenos is that once you have finished processing them, cutting them up, and de-seeding them, you want to make sure you wash your hands really well. And when I say well, I mean really well. Not just rinse them with water, but actually wash them with soap. Alright, we are going to chop up this red onion, and there's a few tricks that you want to keep in mind. And I know that we've gone over this before, but a little refresher is always good for everyone. So, of course, gripping your knife properly, you want to cut this root end here. So, not the hairy end. That's always the best way to remember. So we're going to very carefully slice that end off. Whoop, get rid of that. And then we are going to cut through the hairy end, and we're going to cut this onion in half. Right. We won't be needing the whole thing. This makes it a lot easier to peel off the outside layers of skin that we don't want also. Because trying to peel an onion that has not been cut is definitely a hard task. This one kind of has a little bit of yucky stuff on the outermost layer. So we're just gonna peel all of that off and get rid of it. But we wanna make sure we're keeping that hairy end intact, because it's gonna hold everything together for us very nicely as we go about chopping. So with your onion laying flat like this, we are going to take our knife and we're going to cut just a little bit in like that. And then we're going to take our knife and without going all the way to the end, we are just going to cut down this. And because of the layered nature of an onion, we've done all of the hard work already. So now we are just going to do this. And look, we have perfect little cubes of onion. You could dice these up a little bit smaller if you'd like. It just depends on how you feel about onions, but I think this is a perfect size for a salsa. All right. Like I said, we won't need the entire thing. We're only using about a cup of red onion. So we'll wear a root end and voila, perfectly diced onions. So I hope that you try this trick at home and let me know how it works out. And then we're gonna move on to adding everything into our bowl and putting this delicious Texas caviar together. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we are back. We have done all of our choppy choppies and we are ready to start mixing this together. So first we are going to take our can of black-eyed peas. Put those in there. All right, save that for recycling. Our black beans, also recycling. And we have our 2 cups of corn. We have 3 thinly sliced scallions, aka green onions. Right. We have 1 cup of diced red onion. And then we have 1/4 cup of cilantro, maybe a little bit more than 1/4 cup. And cilantro is kind of a funny ingredient. Some people really can't eat cilantro, and it's not necessarily that they are allergic to it, but I don't know if you know this, but a small percentage of our population can't eat cilantro or prefer not to eat cilantro because it tastes like soap. Isn't that strange? It doesn't affect everybody. Maybe 1 out of 4 people have that, but the people that have it really don't like cilantro. So if you are one of those people, absolutely forego the cilantro. But if you're like me and you love it, you might want to put in a little bit extra. We have our 5 cloves of minced garlic. And I buy this already minced up. It saves a lot of time, and I use a lot of garlic at home, so it just makes it all around a lot easier to work with that way. We have 4 tablespoons of olive oil. You could use a different kind of oil if you prefer something other than olive oil, but I find it has a nice rich flavor. And we are going to use 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. And the acidity in that red wine vinegar really brings all of these flavors together and makes the bright flavors of these fresh vegetables really pop. We are going to put a little bit of black pepper in there and some kosher salt. And I know that I've mentioned this before, but the difference between kosher salt and table salt, this does not have iodine in it. And it tends to be bigger flakes or chunks of salt as opposed to table salt, which is very, very finely ground. And the last thing, we are going to use the juice of 1 lime. And I definitely know I've shown you this trick before, but on your citrus, anything that you're going to juice, if you put it on your counter, press down pretty firmly and roll it, it loosens up all the pulp on the inside and it makes it a lot easier to get all of the juice out of whatever you're using, whether it's a lemon, a lime, or an orange. So we've got that. Let's grab our knife. And then we're just gonna squeeze the juice in there. And much like the vinegar, that acidity and wonderful flavor of the lime is gonna bring everything together very nicely. And of course, all these ingredients that are in here, if there's something that you don't care for, you could always replace it with something that you like better. That's the joy of salsas. I looked at a few different recipes from different places for this Texas Caviar, and each one was just slightly different as far as the ingredients that you put in. Some of them did not include the garlic, but I am a big fan, so definitely I wanted to make sure that we use that. And then you are just going to gently fold everything together. And if you remember from one of our previous cooking videos, folding just means that you're doing it very gently and you're kind of going from the bottom and lifting up. We don't want to stir really hard because we don't want to smush these beans. Those canned beans are going to be a little bit softer, so we don't want to compromise the integrity of those softer ingredients. And we have everything mixed up and it is beautiful. It's so colorful. Obviously, you know that I really like colorful things, so we are ready to go. And I like to eat my salsa with corn chips. I have recently discovered this brand. It's a Florida company. I buy them at Publix. They have a little bit of seasoning on them. They're very crisp and super, super delicious. So if you're at Publix and you see these, try them out. And I think that you'll like them. You can thank me later. Of course, if you don't like corn chips, you could eat these with crackers. You could put it on a taco. You could use it in any way that you would use any other type of salsa. I hope that you really love this recipe. And after you've made it, I'd love to know how much you enjoyed making it and how tasty it was. I will see you next month on Fresh for Kids. Have a great day.